The new Inside Infinite is now available for the month of October. I'm going to be breaking it down in this video for you guys. It's going to be detailing the design choices for a lot of the characters in the game, especially the enemies. And yes, we're going to get to Craig as well and how he got his glow up. But there was also a lot of new information from the UI team and how they made some of the decisions that they've made with changing Halo Infinite's UI compared to the previous Halo titles while trying to remain as legacy as possible. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. While there are some pieces of new information for Halo Infinite in this blog, most of it is more insights on how they made certain decisions for the design of the game, which is different from most of the previous Inside Infinites because we were so starved for details, and they were basically just drip feeding us new information on the game so that you guys really don't have to read through this really long blog post and sift through all the information, which took me about 30 to 45 minutes. You get to watch it in video form, so make sure you guys hit the like button to show your appreciation for that. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to stay absolutely up to date on all the latest happenings in the world of Halo Infinite. And this goes for both pre-launch and of course post-launch, because this game is going to be changing constantly, and I'm going to be covering all the latest updates on Halo, whether that be weapon balancing, new guides for locations of a lot of the collectibles and things like that. So make sure you guys are here for that. I promise you, you will not regret it. And we're trying to get to 5,000 subs before the launch of the game, so help me get there, please. Now let's start with the design of the characters. Firstly, the Marines in Halo Infinite. And I really think that this is a perfect blend between Halo CE to Halo Reach as far as the Marine design goes. It looks like it incorporates aspects of all the designs from the old games into this design for Halo Infinite. Now for you eagle-eyed fans out there, you might notice that there looks to be a Magnum in the holster of one of the Marines there. Now, according to 2 penny props, this new Magnum is just a holster with a loose Magnum design hard modeled in. It originated from Lasky's holster in Halo 4 and was also seen in-game on the Halo 4 Marines. They said sorry about the bad news. The design simply carried over from Infinite just to set everybody's expectations. However, 343 did note in the past that they are open to bringing back old weapons from Halo Sandbox into Halo Infinite, including the Magnum and the pump shotgun. So, all hope is not lost. 343 went on to say that every character in Halo Infinite was redesigned in some way, and Halo Infinite has been referred to internally at the studio as a spiritual reboot. And with that kind of designation, 343 said it made it easier for them to incorporate some more legacy designs into the characters. One of the best examples of that is the designs of the elites, grunts, and jackals, who all have a much more legacy looking design than their Halo 4 and 5 counterparts. 343 said that they settled mostly around the Halo 3 to Halo Reach time frame and then incorporated the Banished aesthetic where it made sense along with Halo Infinite's art direction, and because of that art direction, it allowed 343 to add their own little flair while staying true to the legacy of the last 20 years of Halo. Now, what I found was really interesting that was new information was the evolution of the sandbox and how that was designed, especially when we're talking about equipment. So an example of this would be the grapple shot. When you use it on a brute, it will pull you towards the brute. However, when you try to use it on a hunter, it will be deflected by the hunter. And you cannot attach to a jackal that has a shield either. It will kind of pop their shield to the side to allow you to go on ahead and get that headshot. They said that another evolution in the combat and the AI of Halo Infinite's enemies is that some of the smarter AI will upgrade their weapons in the middle of the battle by grabbing a better weapon off a rack, the ground, or even something called a grunt mule. Now, what is a grunt mule? Well, the brutes outfit this grunt in banished armor, and they make them carry their power weapons for them. Now, this variant of a grunt scours the battlefield, picking up weapons and grenades, and has them attached to their back for either the banished to use or the player to use. Now, grunt mules can be a great way to get power weapons in Halo Infinite. And speaking of grunts, they're as funny as ever. They said that the voiceover for grunts and sitting around them and listening to their conversations will not disappoint. Now, they even shared details on the design of the brutes and their armor. So they said as you fight the brutes, you'll see all kinds of armor and debris flying off them, from shoulder pads to thigh pads and helmets. So with that knowledge in hand, they gave the brutes a full body tech suit, because they knew that this modular type of armor would be flying off. You didn't want to see butt-ass naked brutes, I guess. And they even mentioned Craig and how he has changed quite drastically from the initial gameplay trailer to the one that we just got this week. Now keep in mind that these are high-resolution renders and they are captured in-engine using their development tools, and they don't necessarily represent how these models will look in game. But suffice to say, Craig is definitely looking a lot better. And they said that the team kind of has a love-hate relationship with Craig. It was fun to see a lot of the memes and stuff that the community generated. However, it was kind of a scar for the studio because he represented some content and systems that were not ready for prime time in that original demo that was shown. However, the positive outcome for Craig was that he was one of the factors in gaining some more time to finish the work that they need to finish and get more time to polish the game, and they are very happy with where he is right now. They also said that players who look hard enough will still be able to find some evidence of Craig in Halo Infinite. His spirit lives on. So I expect some really cool Halo Infinite Craig Easter eggs to find in the campaign. Now 343 said that something that they wanted to pursue pretty early in the concept stage of Halo Infinite were bosses or mini bosses. That evolved into conversations on how they could manifest themselves in the game. And as we saw from the campaign overview trailer, there's things called Spartan killers that will come across during Infinite's campaign. And these Spartan killers are an elite force of banished that could go toe-to-toe with a Spartan and win. And another part of the design process was how they could differentiate these Spartan killers from the rest of the faction that they're a part of. 343 also detailed the new enemy type that we saw in the campaign overview trailer, which is the Skimmer. And they said they won't give away too much about them, but they are a mid-tier combatant, sort of at the level with the Jackals or higher tier Grunts. Now they're not full flying enemies, which we know can be pretty annoying in FPS titles. We're looking at you, watchers from Halo 4 and 5. They do hover slightly off the ground, and they provide unique challenges and opportunities to the player while on foot or in a vehicle. However, if you are in a vehicle, they say watch out, especially your tanks. Keep them clear of these skimmers. So it could be really interesting to see how these enemies react to vehicles. All right, now let's talk about the UI and some of the design decisions there. One of the key pillars that 343 said was that they wanted to innovate and modernize where they should, but don't change for the sake of change, which a lot of fans have said that 343 does a lot. And I'm glad they gave some more information on this in particular. They said one of the major goals that they had for the UI was to get out of the way of the strong visual experiences that they were trying to deliver through the environment in the game. And they said compared to past Halos, the front end menus are a little more muted to let the Spartans and the scenery shine. For the HUD, they removed the helmet geometry that was seen in Halo 4 and 5 and shifted persistent elements out of the top corners like the grenades and weapons to reduce eye fatigue, cognitive load, and arena sweatiness, which were serious issues called out by Halo 5 players. They said that the old layout caused players to scan all four corners of the screen constantly during gameplay. They want the pressure that players feel to come from the gameplay situation and not from the HUD layout, which makes a lot of sense to me. It is still hard to get used to the new HUD, but I'm sure we can eventually get used to it. Now, another result from this change is that players can enjoy the skybox and the Halo ring, find vertical targets faster, and have a better experience while using things like the grapple shot. Some of the design choices that they said they went into for Halo Infinite's HUD was contrast and quick readability, and also to have critical info be conveyed through motion and clean messaging. Use of gradients softened the harsh look of flat line work, as well as allowing the player's eyes to be guided across the screen along those leading lines. They said all those decisions enhanced the flow of the information and presentation while retaining that signature Halo HUD look. If you take any gameplay screenshot from any part of Halo Infinite, you should instantly recognize it as being Halo Infinite's HUD. It should still look similar enough to legacy HUDs from the series past. Now, when it comes to differences between the multiplayer and campaign, there are subtle differences between the HUDs for each mode. So for campaign, it has a stronger narrative need, of course, so a lot of the information in the HUD is used to help elevate the story while still providing the player with information they need to understand the current state of the game. There are moments where they know they could do unique things with the HUD because the player will be in a non-confrontational part of the game. Now, these include everything from mission trackers to holographic terminal interfaces. Also things like suit firmware upgrades, a fully realized 3D TAC map, archives, and even assassination dossiers, which, yes, that's very interesting, which reminds me a lot of the Shadow of Mordor Nemesis system that could be used for these Spartan killer boss fights. And we do see a target section in the TAC map. When you press pause, there is something that says targets, and I think that's where we're going to see those kind of assassination dossiers. Now, this TAC map is an expansive map and mission tracker for players to explore and plan their approach. And it even shows things like the collectibles on the ring. Now, you could zoom into this TAC map. There is a fast travel that is also available from that screen, A lot of information there. It's going to be interesting to see when you zoom in how detailed this map could actually get, because it looks pretty detailed as it is from the gameplay that we've seen. Now there is an upgrades menu as well for Master Chief's equipment and suit upgrades, so there might be even more to this section than what we saw in the campaign overview video. There's also the FOB section, which stands for Forward Operating Bases. So this is an area when you unlock more of them, you get more support items. And then finally, which is going to be really cool, especially from a content creation standpoint for myself, is the database section, which is a compendium of narrative logs and collectibles found across the world of Zeta Halo. Now for multiplayer, there's a heavier focus on having it at a glance information. Obviously, it's a lot more fast paced. There is a balance you must strike between providing information and gaining attention. If you do too much of either, the HUD becomes obtrusive. Multiplayer also has more specific user types that need to be accounted for with the HUD. From a casual person to a competitive player, Slayer to big team battle, everyone is going to have a unique need or desire for how they want the HUD to function. Now, sometimes they need to make a decision that is acceptable for most use cases, but that may not be the best solution for some specific situations. They're always taking feedback and adjusting where they can. They're looking for ways that they can provide players with even more options to adjust the HUD to their liking in the future, and they're planning to bring some player customizable elements into the HUD, so stay tuned, they said. And stay tuned to the channel as well. Now, something that I believe is really cool is the implementation of the VISR operating system across Halo Infinite. Much like Windows as an operating system, it's a universal language across all the HUD elements in Halo Infinite. So this VISR OS has its own set of design pillars so that it looks consistent across many different aspects of the game. Now, the design of this actually started with the digital display for the AR, or the ammo counter, and it kind of just went from there. Now this whole visor system gives you information on Chief's visor, as well as the TAC map and upgrade section of the menu. All that is under the VISR OS. Now I'll give you guys some insight and information from the UI and user experience team for customization in Halo Infinite, which they put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into. So they talked a lot about preserving player choice in terms of making sure that they could show the customization item along with the coding that the player already has equipped in the customization menu. So say for example, you choose to equip a purple coating and you start browsing helmets. Well, you see each of those helmets reflect the coating that you currently have equipped, which is a really cool feature. Now from the user experience side, one of the tent poles of the design was to tell players how to get a certain item if you didn't own it. They didn't want to hide locked items either from the player. They want the player to be able to see the items they're missing, find out how you can unlock them. Another new implementation was something that they refer to internally as deep linking. So for example, if you don't have an item in the battle pass, the system will let you know what level of the battle pass it is available at and take you to it so you could view it in the battle pass itself. And they also didn't get to ship every feature that they wanted, but they did add some great functionality that Halo 5 was missing, like filters and sorting, along with a very cool compare function. You could also inspect and favorite armor that other players are wearing, and then filter the favorites in your own inventory so that you could later find out how to get them if you want to unlock them, which is another really cool feature. And 343 also gave some insight on how the pandemic of COVID has affected game development. Now, of course, they're not comparing their hardships that happened at the studio and through game development to what real people were experiencing with their families and through the pandemic because of this nasty virus. There is no comparison there. However, it is nice to see some of the insight and just how drastic this pandemic affected the game's development. They said they only met for a handful of brainstorm sessions before the pandemic decided to throw a massive wedge into their studio's day-to-day. Now remember, this is just from somebody who's talking from the UI and user experience team, specifically talking about the customization things that they were trying to implement before COVID hit. This isn't a representation of how COVID affected the game's entire development. But the team had to overcome countless communication and resulting tech hurdles as the studio was literally siloed at home. Now fast forward to the present day, things run so much more smoothly. They've worked a lot of those kinks out and have built processes that account for the ever-changing needs of the working world. But it's so refreshing to look back and see how far they've come since the pandemic started, says 343. They also said that the Slipspace engine features a lot of net new and updated tech for some of these new features, because it wasn't originally built to support some of the things that they were putting in. Now 343 also gave some hints towards the future of Halo Infinite from the UI and user experience teams. And of course, just like everything else that we've heard about Halo Infinite, this is something that's going to be changing over time, and they're going to be working with the community as far as implementing features. Now, they said they don't want to give away too much to ruin the fun, but they've been hard at work to define a feature roadmap that will see both improvement and evolution to all that they already support in the game at launch, along with continual development of new content and features that will roll out over the coming seasons for Halo Infinite. They said that they also want to reiterate that the UI presentation is not just a tool that guides their players through the experience, but also as a storytelling device that will allow 343 to expand upon the vast world that is being created. And they said wink wink, nudge nudge. I don't know what that means. To me, that could be, of course, some DLC or expansions as far as story. That's what that sounds like to me, and I'm really hoping for Infinite to have that. I'd almost guarantee it at this point. Which of course brings us to the finale of the blog post, which always ends with something I call Staten's statement. Joseph Staten goes on and says something about the game, and it's always definitely very interesting. And he says a great example of how the character, user interface, and user experience team, and many others of course, joined forces to create a part of the Infinite campaign experience that feels classic and innovative at the same time is the ransom keep sequence in the campaign overview trailer. They said internally they call it Super Soldier Base Assault, which he says is truly epic, good fun, and here's why. Halo games have always been about freedom, and more specifically, the freedom to make interesting tactical choices to optimize your power projection inside a rich physical simulation. While previous Halo campaigns have been chock full of interesting choices, none have had a world simulation that comes close to Halo Infinite's. Specifically, banished bases like Ransom Keep aren't obstacles across a linear path. They don't have 1 or 2 or 3 avenues of attack. They are literally approachable from every cardinal direction, and often enough from above and below as well. They don't just have designer crafted, pre-placed weapons and vehicles that encourage you to lean into a particular set of tactics. These mighty fortresses stand ready to repulse any arsenal that you choose to deploy against them. And that's actually pretty smart of the banished, because super soldiers have many choices. These of course include equipment, and if you look at the sequence of the campaign overview video, you'll see a first glimpse of how Halo Infinite gives you more freedom than ever before to create your own personal Spartan combat style. Do you want to invest in your threat sensor to improve your reconnaissance capability before executing a stealthier base assault? Do you prefer to amp up your shield core to enable a more tank-like, smash the gate and danger be damned approach? Or maybe the grapple shot is your priority to maximize freedom of movement and manipulation of battlefield objects like the fusion coils. You'll have all those decisions and more when it comes to Halo Infinite, because it is a game that always does its best to say yes to you and the choices that you want to make, and that includes the choice to launch a perfectly good Warthog full of newly liberated Marines safely off the side of a mountain. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. Make sure you click the like button to support the content. Don't forget to subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in either a previous video of mine or a future video of mine. Till that time comes, I'm your boy Pat Man, and I'm out.